from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased. Joining me, CTO and co-founder of Sentra, Ron Reiter. Ron, the way I love to do it, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a bit more about you, your journey, and of course what you're currently up to, and then we can start taking the discussions from there.
Sure. My name is Ron Reiter. I'm co-founder and CTO of Sentra. I am 39. Started coding since basically when I was 9 years old. Just like fell in love with technology. And I first professional experience I had with my computer journey is in the unit 8200 of the military intelligence, where I was a cybersecurity specialist. So that's where I kind of learned, professional coding and security and anything related to security, basically. So I was doing that for 4.5 years. And later on, I started a company called Crosswise. Crosswise built cross-device technology to basically understand if devices belong to the same person. It was a need that a friend of mine has kind of understood that exists in the ad tech world. And I believe that with my experience, I couldn't basically solve the problem. So I joined hands with him, and then we joined forces and we started Crosswise. We had very quick success. We sold the company for about $50 million in 2 years. And that's kind of when I realized that I'm an entrepreneur. I was very young, I was 30 back then. And so I joined Oracle. Oracle acquired our company. Then we ended up kind of being there for about 4 years, managing an R&D center here in Israel, and kind of made this experience really taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, management, cloud, data, big data, machine learning, data science, AI, all the buzzwords, and after the 4 long years in Oracle, I kind of thought about, what's next for me, and figured out that, aside from being an angel investor, which I started kind of like right after I sold my company, I started basically thinking, I should probably start another company because this is what I enjoy doing. So that's what I did. I had a great opportunity to start the company with my co-founders, Saf Kochan, Yoav Regev, and Yair Cohen. All of them are ex-8200, ex-military intelligence, and their background and mine kind of came together to this almost a necessity to start a data security company because Yair and I were experts in cloud and data, and Yoav and Asaf were experts in cybersecurity, and we and of course also Yair and I also are cybersecurity specialists, and we kind of joined forces together, and we just thought data security seems to be the next big thing, because when you start moving to the cloud, you realize that first you need to secure the infrastructure, but then you start creating the data, and you realize that data kind of has a life of its own, and data is only growing, and data is becoming more it basically sprawls around, and you know, it's I can tell you about how like an experience I had with data security later on, but you know, this is kind of what I've realized, that, you know, data security kind of, we've all kind of realized it together, that data security is the next big thing in data security, in the security world. That was 3.5 years ago. Sentra today is 70 employees. You know, raised tens of millions of dollars already. Yeah, that's me basically.
Good. Cool. Thank you, Ron, for sharing also the whole journey with us. And to your point, I'm curious a little bit. Like I know like you come from this background, and but cybersecurity isn't easy, right? And it's challenging, and it's crowded also at the same time. But still, when you decided now to co-found another company, yet although like you said, like you were in the big data cloud, all this, but again you choose cybersecurity. So what's the story here?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I love cybersecurity. I mean, I've always loved it. I wasn't doing it much when I was a child. I did it, you know, as part of like just being curious, right? I was one of those, you know, kids that we would, you know, do things that you weren't really allowed to do a lot of times, but that wasn't like the trigger. The trigger was Unit 8200, right? Because basically what happened is, you know, the army needs to use the brains of the Israelis to you know, to do many things. One of them is to ensure that we have the best intelligence, um, and to do that, you can use many methods, and one of the most successful methods is to use cyber. And so basically, I got recruited to be, you know, a professional cybersecurity expert, to do that, right? I wasn't a cybersecurity expert before, but they trained me to do it. So that's kind of how how the world of cybersecurity came, really in a professional way. And once the army, you know, the army really gets you to the highest level possible, and since then it's kind of natural on you, right? Because you learn that when you're 18 years old, and all of your friends are in the same ecosystem, so they kind of like, you know, kind of teach you whatever you need that you don't know yet, and like everyone kind of helps each other, and then there's this trend that all the people, all the military intelligence alumni start companies. They start to build companies in cybersecurity because, you know, because their friends also did the same, right? um, and then suddenly, like, all of your friends who you met in the army are the exact same people that can help you start the, you know, companies, right? So naturally, from a cybersecurity expert, you become a person that if you want to start a company, it's very easy for you, right? And the other thing I've noticed is that, you know, I have a relatively good interpersonal skills compared to other, other geeks in my world, right? Which kind of also, you know, makes me want even more to use the opportunity to start a company using my social skills, right? So using my social skills and my management skills combined with my expertise in cyber kind of like you know, made it really easy for me with my networks and connections. And the thing is that, you know, since I was a young developer or coder, I always loved creating. I always loved creating code. I love creating products, and then I was building websites since I was 17. You know, in ASP3 and PHP, things like that.
Wow.
And I kind of like really liked that, and I really like creating in general. And what's the biggest creation in the world, right? Is a company, right? And creating a company was really like the biggest challenge for me, and that's why I did it the first time. That's why I'm doing it the second time. It's just the challenge is very fun. It's very stressful sometimes, but it's very fun, right?
Right. There's nothing easy, of course. Um, so I've got that, Ron. Now, if I want to talk about Centra and about the gaps that you and your co-founders you have seen in the market, so like what you saw missing and you felt like, okay, guys, let's sit down. I'm sure, like you maybe, as they say, the startup world, you started to draw something on the napkin and you said, okay,
Yeah.
we need to figure out this. So what like were the challenges that you figured out that you need to solve?
So I think it wasn't obviously trivial that we would directly go to data security. I think it took us some time, and we thought about like the different challenges in cybersecurity. Um, from my perspective and from my co-founder's perspective, data security was one of the candidates because for me, I had first of all, I had a lot of knowledge in the cloud and data. That's what I did in Crosswise in my first company, and I realized just how hard it is to track data that the developers are creating and how sensitive it might be. And I actually had this experience where I kind of inherited some servers that had very sensitive personal information, and that PII was apparently exposed to the internet, and someone not from Oracle found it, and then the kind of the person in charge of cybersecurity at Oracle kind of let me know and told me about it, and I immediately realized how dangerous that could be. If you could be easily fined, a GDPR because of GDPR, by I think f- up to 4% of the total revenue of a company, right? So for Oracle, if you think about it, company that makes I don't know, 20, 30, 40 billion dollars a year, it's a making so much money and being and needing to pay a $1 billion fine just because you didn't store personal data correctly. That's not something that I wanted to be part of, right? And then I realized how big the problem is, right? It's not only the regulation, it's the fact that you want to protect your infrastructure, in relative to the sensitivity of the data that resides within the infrastructure, or or the infrastructure allows you to access. So and that realization came really just from a bad experience, right? So that's one of the things that I realized. I think for almost like kind of at the same time, Yair had kind of a similar experience, Asaf had a similar experience. When we all found out that we all had similar experiences with protecting data, critical data, sometimes, looking at it from an attack perspective, and sometimes looking at it from a defense perspective. But the point is that we kind of all realized that, the world doesn't understand it now. And when I say now, I mean 2021. And but this is from our perspective the next big thing in cybersecurity, and I actually still think it's the next big thing in cybersecurity. And to be honest, I think that data security is going to be 5 to 10 times bigger, or a bigger problem in 2035 compared to 2025, right?
This is thought provoking, Ron, and I think but I can guess where you're coming from because when we are talking data today, right? So we're talking about uh, you know everything AI and large language models, and which you need to train on some data. So um, from
Right.
security aspect, what do you think are like the most overlooked security risks? For people who rush also, because at some stage, to your point, people were rushing to go to the cloud, and now people are rushing to adopt AI. So what's your
Yeah.
take on the cybersecurity and data security aspect of this?
So I think two things, right? The first thing is that people don't think about what type of data they're training on, right? Maybe they're training on data that has passwords that it's not supposed to go into the model. Maybe they're training their models on data that other people aren't supposed to see. And they're not thinking about the differentiation, right? They're not thinking about the authorization layer. They're not thinking about the need to segment the data and the users from accessing that data, right? They just think about, let's take all this corporate information, put it in and train on it, and then let people just use the model, right? And that's obviously a big problem. And the same problem, I think, happens with RAG, right? So when you want to implement RAG on a model, right, you also kind of, a lot of people, what we've seen is they forget the authorization layer, right? They forget that to properly activate a model, you have to make sure that the person who's using the model is kind of reflecting the same credentials and authorization as what the RAG request is actually managing to do. So I think that's the two problems. And I think the first problem is much more acute because it's much harder to solve, right? The moment you fine tune a model, it's done, right? You have to like start over again if you want to remove data. It could be a process that costs a lot of money. And what's even more dangerous about it is that AI models, specifically LLMs, generative AI models, the prompt-based ones, so they're actually very easy to they're very good at summarizing data, right? So let's say you would take a lot of documents, and some of them would have sensitive information, maybe passwords, right? And so you'd simply you can simply ask the model, just tell me like all about all the sensitive passwords that you know about, right? That you've been taught, and it would just immediately spit it out. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, staying within the data landscape and regarding the AI. So traditionally, the company, let's say sensitive data used to sit in some limited spaces and places, if I want to use the term. So but now, things change. So so first thing is like the data is so much fragmented, Ron. So we have still few data in the databases, but the majority of data is unstructured, so sitting on different places here and there in the cloud also as well. So from your experience, and I'm curious to understand also how with Centra you help organizations. So first, to understand where their data is, right, and do this kind of profiling the data so they can first think, understand what is the landscape that is dangerous for them, and then maybe start to apply the measures. So looking at your thoughts on the unstructured data, which is, I think personally, is kind of underrated when we talk to enterprises today.
Right. So I think, the way that the enterprise is supposed to handle the unstructured data, first of all, it needs a proper tools to handle it, right? So you would need to understand what type of sensitive entities you have inside unstructured data, which is a very hard problem, by the way. A problem that you can only use, you have to use large language models to solve. You would also need to understand what the document is about, right? Who, and like, for example, is it an HR document? Is it an invoice? What type of document is it? And then you have to understand who owns the document, right? And to think about, if it's owned by a person from an HR division, so maybe the data is belongs to HR and so forth. So first of all, you have to understand the context, and to do that, you have to basically have full visibility on your data, the data that might eventually go into your to training the model, right? So, and once you have this information, which is of course not trivial to achieve, Then you have to understand what goes into the model, what should go into the model, and also eventually what went into the model. If you want to look, on the if you want to analyze what actually happened. So, for example, analyzing SageMaker, or the data sets that are being used to train models retrospectively. That's also something you just want to make sure that you do, because then you can understand if the data, by accident sensitive data went into the model, or things like that. So just to summarize, understanding like what type of sensitive data is in these documents, what type of documents are they, and who has access to them, build a context around and understand which model should be trained by what data, and then retroactively verify that you've done a good job using by scanning the things like SageMaker. That's basically the concepts of what we call AI-SPM, right? AI Security Posture Management.
Okay, so this triggered in my mind another question, which is, why, Ron, do you think the current um, security infrastructure is not enough, to be able to protect, you know, the data in the current use, especially, with the AI use cases and so
Yeah,
on.
great question. I think this has been very coincidental, right? Because up to now, data security was more like just a data discovery and classification tool for just to make sure that your data security posture is correct, that there's no sensitive data moving around places that you don't want to be. But it wasn't really a security tool, in the sense that it needs to be applied in order for you to protect something from happening. And now, because of large language models, now that they exist, and now the training is something that's so common, for the first time, this is becoming something that's not just a recommendation, but actually a requirement. Because if you want to protect information in your company, you have to understand exactly what goes into these models, because everything that goes into these models automatically gets you could assume that it's immediately accessible to everyone in the most in the easiest manner, right? That there's no it's almost as if you would put information that goes into the model out in the internet instantly, right? It's not if you send just one document with a password into a model for training, some malicious actor would immediately query, aggregate, some query that would aggregate all the passwords without even letting you a chance to take it back. I mean, no possibility to take it back, right? It's kind of maybe it's a good analogy would be today you shouldn't commit an AWS access and secret key to GitHub, right? Like the moment you would do that, you would have 100 EC2 instances running and doing crypto mining in a second, right? Because everyone is kind of like on waiting for that moment, right? So it's the same with AI models, right? The moment you put sensitive data in it, that's it.
Right. You mentioned something, previously about also, the use of AI in cybersecurity. What I'm curious about, so now, of course, like has been I like to call it the game. Like all of my guests, like uh, I had them, from cybersecurity perspective. They call like it's the Tom and Jerry game, right? So it's like the cat and mouse game. So now we started to see also the bad actors leveraging these large language models for their
Yeah.
benefits. Um, so have you seen something which really, like, I would say, surprised you in the way they have done this? And how organizations should, be prepared really for these types of attacks? Because it's not like anymore, back in the days, we knew, for example, they use the phishing, so they get access through, a malicious link. they get access inside. Or for example,
Yeah.
the traditional DDoS attacks and all this. But now we're talking about something completely different. Like, and they can be very creative thanks to the LLM, and
Yeah.
not thankfully, but I mean, like, yeah, they are lucky. So, what's your point of view on this, Ron?
Yeah. So I think what I kind of saw and expected is the sophistication of phishing attacks, right? Because up to now, a lot of people, they weren't really good at phishing attacks because they just didn't have good proper English, and they couldn't kind of like maybe say, for example, business email compromise attacks, right? You would kind of like learn about the patterns of how a CEO speaks, but it would be very hard for you to maybe like use that and to craft an email that makes sense, right? So that I've seen that quite a lot now, and that happens more often. What I didn't expect, which is crazy, and that's something that is actually one of the most dangerous attacks, is an AI agent doing phishing attacks, right? So once you have an AI agent talk to you, he could manipulate you emotionally into doing something that you would definitely think like a computer won't do. And you can automate that in scale, right? You can start really like, basically uh, uh, um, just extracting sensitive information out of people in ways that are you would never imagine, right? So the creativity is just as the more creative you are, the easiest it is for you to do it, because I think that's something that will always be inherent in security, right? The humans are always the weakest link. So that's something pretty crazy. What I've also seen, and that's really the scary, is the autonomous malware.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can build malware that actually can basically based on an agent that can act on its own, and using these LLMs, they can actually operate and make decisions once they've attacked a computer, for example. Because up to now, it was very expensive to attack a personal computer, because you'd have to have a hacker, think about like what's inside the computer, maybe write very, very smart software that would extract sensitive information out of a computer while it's there. But using large language models, you can suddenly do these things without like much sophistication. You would just have those AI models just do malicious any type of malicious activity. It would, for example, you could instruct it to steal any password possible in any way that he can think of, and he would do that, right? So that's kind of like very, very scary, because again, you can do this at scale, right? You don't need to be like a professional hacker from a hacking team, or a government, right? You can just write a malware that just automatically starts scraping your computer intelligently without you even noticing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very scary world now, I have to admit.
Right, and I can imagine, of course, because I used to have a friend that he worked for cybersecurity companies, and in always in his when talking to clients, he was saying like hackers are like us, right? So they are people, they have commitments, they need to pay the bills, so they need to be creative, right? So, and
Yeah.
I can imagine them now. So based on all the data that they have also, and all the successful and unsuccessful attempt that they had, I'm sure that they have built their own LLM models that are helping them for sure. Now, but this brings me back to what enterprises is and what companies should be doing, Ron. And, because there is this, even before the AI, so there's always, this, I'll not call it compromise, but the attempt to balance between we need to innovate, we need to launch this project, we need to, like, let's say, push this application to the cloud, and between the cybersecurity. So from your experience, what are some of the mistakes that organizations can avoid, I would say, to keep this balance?
So I think first of all, yeah, you talk the innovation dilemma, right? Is how
Right,
much how much freedom do you give a team with access to data and to resources of the company to experiment with it and copy data and create new data, right?
right.
And versus like holding the data in a very, very secure manner. I think that's kind of very a very obvious one. And I think I'm actually going to say something positive. I think that organizations today actually realize how dangerous it is to give access to data. And I think what happens is that they block innovation, right? They don't let other there's like a lot of segmentation, and there's a lot of uh, um, you know uh, basically permissions that are enforced in the company, and processes that you have to go through to get permissions. And this is the current situation. I think what my recommendation in general is kind of also, you could say it's the reason that we started Sentra, actually, because from our vision is we want to enable the organizations to run fast and secure at the same time. And the only way to do this is to enable this magical technology that guarantees you that you would know exactly where your sensitive data is at all times, right? So you would define a policy that says, okay, this is the type of sensitive data that I don't want, or even let the Central do this on its own, in a way that basically guarantees that no sensitive data would be copied or would be placed in places that it shouldn't be. And once you have, you know that you're basically guaranteeing that you know where your sensitive data is at all times, then you wouldn't be afraid of giving access to the innovation teams and whatever to basically experiment with sensitive information. So just to summarize, if you have the proper security mechanisms of discovering classification, of knowing about data that you don't know that exists, right? Then you can let innovation teams iterate quickly and have more freedom about what type of data they have access to.
Yeah, I've seen something on the website, and I need your correction here, Ron. So because I've seen, of course, like other than what is known as the DSPM, the data security posture management. So you do also response, and this is to your point. Like when we talk about response, is doing like corrective actions. So do you think also part of the thing that you could be able to help organizations with? So if someone is doing, let's say, um, I mistakenly, opened access to someone which I shouldn't do. So an agent would come in and say, "Hey, Mehmet, like, I think you should, you know, change, what you have done because one, two, three, right?" So is this something that you can help organizations with today, Ron, or is it like something possible in the future?
Yes, definitely. So the data security, Central's data security platform basically helps organizations using three products: DSPM, DDR, and DLP. DSPM being data security posture management is the analysis product that understands the data security posture, understands if data is misplaced or shadow or overly excessive or publicly accessible. So that's kind of one thing. DDR is kind of the detection and response module, right? To just, if you need to make sure that there's no malware encryption being done in real time, or data exfiltration, things that attackers might do right now that would put your business at risk. And then, of course, send an alert to a SOC team that will be able to solve it. And the last thing, which is the prevention, right, the piece, the DLP. So today we already support DLP use cases by tagging. We could actually integrate into DLP systems, that can basically integrate with N365 or endpoint to block sensitive data from leaving the corporate environment. Another thing that we're able to do is to automate things like removing the sharing configuration out of sensitive assets, right? Let's say an organization would say, I don't think that confidential documents should ever be externally shared, right? So we would be able to also automate the removal of that share. So we do have an automation module that allows to either push tags out to systems like Microsoft Purview Information Protection or other utilities, as well as to action on the data to prevent potential data leaks, such as removing public file sharing.
It's good. It's good to know that, Ron. And I asked this specifically so you can share that with us. Um, so let's have I know no one has crystal balls. I know all my guests are telling me we don't know what's happening in the future. Things are evolving very fast. But if I want to take your opinion about the future of the relationship between the AI transparency and data privacy in the coming years, how do you envision that, Ron?
Well, actually, they kind of negate each other, because I mean they're both some things that the public cares about deeply. Regulations are we're seeing regulations pop up with both, but they kind of go against each other, right? The more AI transparency you have, the more you disclose information that might hurt the privacy of people, because eventually the data that is used to train models belongs to someone, right? And that's kind of, I think, the fine line, and it's a tough question, like how do you achieve both AI transparency and data security at the same time? It's something that you have to balance.
Right. And if we want to talk about emerging threats, of course, like you mentioned, the use of AI and the sophistication of AI. Other than this, what else, maybe you're expecting or you started to see signs of some emerging threats that are upcoming, and how do you think the customers who would be leveraging your platform would be able to defend from these threats?
So I think what we've seen is there's more attacks related to data, both ransomware and data exfiltration. We're seeing that more and more people understand the sensitivity of data and the way to act on sensitive data, right? It's easier for companies nowadays to find sensitive data, exfiltrate it, and sell it online for Bitcoin or whatnot. And that's kind of that's apparent that more and more attacks are focused around stealing sensitive data. That's something we're seeing more and more, and to be honest, I really hope that we can develop a great product that can help as many companies as possible to really defend against this threat, because it's a very hard threat to defend against. Knowing that you have good data security posture, being able to protect all your boundaries, all the corporate environment, wherever data is, being able to track all data moving in and out. It's a huge problem. It's a problem that we're aiming at solving, and it will take us more time to develop the ultimate data security platform that can look at data wherever it is and protect data wherever it is. Just because data is just something so hard, right? It's hard to understand that it's sensitive. It's hard to understand who has access and who should have access, and it's also hard to protect and avoid data leaking, because you can't, a lot of times, the amount of processing that you would need to do to understand if data is even sensitive is not something that an organization would even want to consider running in terms of cost. So it's a really hard problem to solve, but it's a problem that needs to be solved.
Absolutely. Now, like as a final, you know, part of today's podcast, you kind of touch on it at the beginning, when you were discussing your career, Ron. But being an entrepreneur and a CTO in cybersecurity, and you've seen like other sides of it also as well. Like, if we want to talk to founders, or like to be founders, or to be entrepreneurs in that space, like what kind of advice you can give them if they want to be in the cybersecurity space?
So I meet, I think dozens of founders that or wannabe founders that are starting or want to start companies in cybersecurity, and they all ask me that question, especially how I also help them look for ideas, and my from what I've learned, both about my experience and in general, is that the VC trends are actually not not indicative of anything. The real problems that become categories are the problems that a CISO would say that they're real, and B, he would pay a lot of money on.
Hmm.
And I think that's the combination is what people are missing. I think a lot of times in cybersecurity in general, in specifically in cybersecurity, people often try to solve a small problem, even though it exists. Solving a small problem doesn't mean that someone would make the effort of buying it or paying a significant amount of money that would justify building a company around it, especially because of the way that cybersecurity companies work. They basically try to build a suite of security products and sell them to their existing customer base, and those customers would always prefer to get just one cloud security product, just one data security product, or one endpoint security product, right? And not 20 others. I think what is apparent, and I think it's maybe goes against that point, is in cybersecurity there's so many emerging threats that you often do need innovative solutions that the traditional companies can't provide, and that's why there's always room for innovation, always room for startups, but you have to solve a big problem, right? If you solve a small problem and you see all the VCs go and think that they know what they're doing because they invested in one company, and then they saw that one VC invested in one company, and then that's the reason that they invest in another company. It doesn't mean anything. You have to be confident in yourself, knowing that it's a big problem, knowing that the person that you're going to build that solution will actually buy the product and pay a lot for it. And I think also what's very important is to think about the future and see in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, will it grow, right? You don't want to build an on-prem detection product, probably because it's not a market that will grow. But you can
Right.
probably assume that cloud will grow, right?
Right, absolutely. And to your point, Ron, and I think I'm not saying it's easy to start a company, and especially in cybersecurity. The good thing is their persona is known, right? So they know at least it's going to be the CISO, right? So they
Yeah.
have to focus now on, like, as you said, can they, in my opinion, humble opinion, can they quantify the problem in a way that it's seen big enough, which should be, to your point? So me as a decision maker on the other side of the table would say, hey, yeah, I can justify spending, I don't know, like X thousands or millions of dollars on this solution. So thank you for bringing this. Ron, like finally, how people can get in touch with you and the Centra team.
So please feel free to send me an email, ron@centra.io. Looking me up on LinkedIn is harder because I locked my profile, but just send me an email. Happy to answer any question.
Great, Ron. I really enjoyed the discussion, and like you have the blend of all the deep technical knowledge, and of course also the business and entrepreneurial knowledge. So thank you for sharing that with the audience here today. I really appreciate this, and yeah, I'm gonna put the Centra website on the show notes. So if someone is interested, so you can reach out to the team over there. And this is for the audience. This is how usually I end my episodes. So if you just discovered this podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, give us a thumb up, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming, thank you for sending me your support and your messages. I really appreciate all the nice words you send to me all the time. And thank you for tuning in today. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.